Welcome back to DSR and welcome back to Eberron. So I'm going to go over another subclass from this supplement called Quickstone. This was released on DM's Guild for the 2024 rules, but it came out right at this. I think it was released the same month that the 2024 rules were released. So some of the stuff probably needs to be tweaked and cleaned up a little bit, but it would have been hard to tell how the rules were actually going to finalize with 2024 because they didn't actually have access to those while they were finishing this supplement. But I think it's a fantastic supplement. So this is great, and I hope that if it gets enough traction on DM's Guild, that it'll get picked up by D&D Beyond. Because I would love to see this get spruced up like they did for Exploring Eberron, and spruce it up a little bit. Tweak a few things, clean up a few things, and then publish it on D&D Beyond so that we can easily access it by just buying the book. And now we'll have all the character options on our character sheet without homebrewing anything. All right, I already did the origin feat, so we're going to go right into the general feats. First up, we have Ashbound Initiate. And let me give you a little background on this one. The Ashbound is the druidic order that believes that magic is going to be the driving force for the destruction of the world, right? So they're kind of like, it's kind of like the metaphor for technology in our world, right? Where technology is, some people believe technology is destroying our world, and it's hard to argue that that's at least partially true. So they believe that magic is destroying their world, and so they oppose magic in all forms of, well, arcane magic specifically, right? And they think divine magic is like only slightly less bad than arcane magic, something like that. So they oppose, and their spectrum of opposition is either preaching against it, kind of at the one end, and then at the other end there's some extremists who actually go out and are like eco terrorists kind of thing, I think. So if you're a lore buff on Eberron and I got any of that wrong, let me know in the comments so I can add some corrections. All right, Ashbound Initiate. You have learned a certain number of the secrets and techniques of the Ashbound Druidic Order. You gain the following benefits. Increase your Wisdom or Charisma score by 1 to a maximum of 20. You gain proficiency in the Intimidation skill. And I think that's where it's leaning into trying to oppose arcane magic users, like intimidating people into opposing arcane magic. Arcane Enmity. When a creature you can see casts a spell, you have advantage on attack rolls against that creature until the end of your next turn. Interesting. If you have the spellcasting or the pact magic spell class features, the spells on the Ashbound spells table are added to the spells of your spellcasting class. Guiding Bolt, Branding Smite, Non-Detection, or of Purity, Circle of Power. So Branding Smite got updated to Shining Smite, so you'll just have to make that transition manually, right? If you're gonna have to homebrew this anyway to add it to your campaign. So Branding Smite was replaced by Shining Smite, or renamed and then tweaked. So you just make that change when you're homebrewing this. This is actually probably the biggest part of this is the Arcane Enmity. If this is on a half caster, right? So put this on a half caster, or maybe any kind of a martial, right? I mean, if you're not a spellcaster of some sort, then you're missing out on the spell list. But maybe you don't care that much about the spell list. Guiding Bolt is not great if you are a martial. Okay, even if you're a full caster, it's okay-ish, not great. Branding Smite's pretty good if you don't have any other smites or anything demanding your bonus action, right? Non-detection can be good for scouting missions, depending on how your DM interprets it. Like I like to interpret it as, because there's a part of non-detection that says any kind of scrying, scrying device created by observer. What is the word they use? I forget the word. Created by a divination spell can't see you, and I interpret it as, well, anything that gives you the ability to see, like see invisibility. Well, that's turning your eyes into a scrying device, so it can't see you either, right? Somebody with see invisibility can't see you either if you've got non-detection going, and that just makes non-detection like a little better, and might actually apply in a few more situations. It's pretty niche. But if you got to sneak in and I don't know, assassinate a bad evil wizard, non-detection can be quite useful. Or of Purity is not one of the best aura spells, but it's still useful. And then Circle of Power actually is quite good. That's a very good spell. So in the hands of like a half caster, this is a good feat. In the hands of just straight martials, this could still be good. Just getting advantage on attack rolls against any creature that casts a spell for the rest of till the end of your next turn. So more than one round, potentially. If they cast a spell during your turn, right, you get them to cast shield spell. Now all of a sudden you have advantage on all of your attacks until the end of your next turn. So yeah, this is kind of an interesting spectrum on this one. It can be, depending on the build, it might, if you're just a full caster, this is probably Yeah, a C kind of feat. If you're a marshal and can take advantage of the branding smite, and you make a lot of attack rolls, things like that, this I would rank this as maybe an A to even S. Yeah, maybe A to S. So it really varies depending on your build. All right, let's move on. Gatekeeper Initiate. So this is another druidic order, and this is the druidic order that is opposed and keeps all the gates into Kyber, the underworld, closed, right? So that demons, fiends, and aberrations can't escape into the world, right? So this is the front line, keeping those gates closed, keeping the rest of the world safe from the invasion. Okay, as I understand. Again, if I got any of that wrong, let me know in the comments so I can add some corrections. I don't want to lead people astray. Gatekeeper Initiate. You have learned a certain number of secrets and techniques of the Gatekeeper Druidic Order. You gain the following benefits. Increase your Wisdom or Charisma score by 1 to a maximum of 20. Gatekeeper Proficiency. You gain proficiency in the Arcana skill. Protection against aberrations. When you make a saving throw against the magic abilities of an aberration or a spell cast by an aberration, you can roll 1d4 and add it to your saving throw. So that makes me think that the underworld is maybe just the Delkir and the aberrations, and maybe the fiends are not there. So you're really just holding the gates against the aberrations, right? Otherwise, you'd have benefits against fiends and aberrations. So maybe I got that part wrong, and it's just aberrations, which are called the Delkir in Eberron. Gatekeeper spells. If you have the spellcasting your pack's magic class features, the spells in the Gatekeeper spells are added to the spell list of your spellcasting class. So detect evil and good, warding bond, magic circle, banishment, and dispel evil and good. A lot of those are okay. Banishment is pretty good. Dispel evil and good, pretty good. None of these are super great, but I wouldn't say any of them are terrible either. Those are all kind of the middle, which is fine. It's where you kind of like to see things. You don't want things to be super overpowered and always the best choice, and you also don't want to see it to be the worst choice always either. All right. Some sweet art. The Greensinger Initiate. And I don't know what the Greensinger order is. I forgot to check in on that one and research some lore there. So if you know the lore of the Greensinger, please let me know in the comments. Greensinger Initiate. You have learned a certain number of secrets and techniques of the Greensinger Druidic Order. You gain the following benefits. +1 to your Wisdom or Charisma. You gain proficiency in the Performance skill. Fey Dancer. Whenever you cause a creature to gain the charmed condition, you can join them in dance and revelry. If you do so, you can use your reaction to move up to half your speed without provoking opportunity attacks. Your spells and magic abilities affect humanoids. That affect humanoids also affect Fey. And then you get some Greensinger spells, which is Tasha's Hideous Laughter, Enthrall, Major Image, Compulsion, and Mislead. So a lot of interesting things here. Different than what we normally see, and I like that, right? Some different mechanics leaning into a theme. They've done a pretty good job of like creating a theme, both mechanically and roleplay wise, and then leaning into that. So I like this for those reasons. The Fey Dancer is an interesting feature. Like we've never seen anything that triggers when you charm a creature that causes you to like, and then the flavor text is fantastic, right? You join them in dance and revelry, allowing you to just use your reaction, move up to half your speed without provoking an opportunity attack. That's pretty cool. It is a little interesting that you don't get a single spell in your spell list that causes the charmed condition. Even compulsion doesn't. So, yeah, you'd have to have something else that allows you to charm things. There's a lot of spells that do that. There's a lot of class features that do that. Putting this on a bard would be great. Bards have a lot of ways, especially like a glamour bard who has a lot of ways to charm people. That would even trigger, this charm condition would even trigger if you're able to get the friends condition, the friends cantrip to work on them, but the friends cantrip automatically fails if you're in combat with them. So, and if you're not in combat, your movement speed doesn't really matter. I don't know. There might be some clever ways to make that work. This is cool. Fey Affinity. There are a number of spells that only work on humanoids and not Fey. So hold person, charm person, basically anything that says person, like dominate person. All of those are humanoids only and don't affect Fey. So now those spells would also affect Fey. There might be a few others that I'm forgetting, but not many. There's not a lot of spells like that. So this is a cool feat. I think it could be useful on a number of builds. And not only mechanically useful, but really helping you lean into some cool flavor and roleplay, which I like. Hewn for battle. All right, so this is the first of our species-specific feats that we're going to look at. And frankly, I wish I had read ahead to read these feats when I covered the species, and then I could have referenced these with those species. Because I do feel like the gargoyle kind of falls flat a little bit, but they've got 2 feats that completely change the game and make up for, kind of the species falling a little bit flat. And this is one of them. So Hewn for battle. You have to be a gargoyle, and you have reshaped your stone body to be a more effective and devastating weapon of war. You gain the following benefits: increase your strength and constitution by 1 to a maximum of 20. Thickened hide. When you finish a short or long rest, you can choose the thickness of your natural armor. While you aren't wearing armor, your base armor class becomes your choice of either 14 plus your dexterity modifier or 18. You can choose a shield and still gain this benefit. So that's right there, super powerful, right? If you're a rogue or ranger or some sort of dexterity based gargoyle, and you could by level 4 you should have a +4 modifier in dexterity score, and by level 6 or 8, depending on if you're a fighter or not, you could have a +5, which means that would mean make your base AC 19 plus a shield for 21. And if your dexterity is any lower than 18, you could just go this route, choose the 18, and now you have a base AC of 18 with your shield, 20 with your shield. So that's super strong. That's the effectively wearing plate armor without having to buy it. Like, most of the time, player characters don't get access to plate armor until, I don't know, level 7 or 8, when they have enough money or they find it or something like that. So all right, if they just stopped right there, this would have been solid. Okay, even better though, and I love that they thought about this, right? This is one of the biggest mistakes I see other people do when they design things like this, is they give you this really cool weapon that's built in your subclass, or it's really cool armor built in your subclass, but there's no way to enhance it. And now you have, at the very least, a bunch of feel bad moments, if not some. I mean, you're just gonna have feel bad moments, right? Where it's not the best thing you have anymore, and you just got a magic item, but you can't benefit from it because you're stuck with your other, built-in version of that magic item, and you can't enhance your built-in version. So eventually, at some point, you're going to take a magic item that's better, and then your thing that you got from your subclass or your feat or your species or whatever it is now irrelevant. And those are all just feel-bad moments. Okay, so they thought ahead and added this feature: spell carving. Your hide can be enchanted or infused as if it were non-magical armor. Sweet. Notice that reference infused, which is what artificers used to do. Now, that was still relevant in 2024. It wasn't until just this past November, when they finally released the book, Eberron, Forge of the Artificer, that they changed. So now it's no longer infusions, but they just replicate magic items. So that term is outdated, but only as of 3 months ago. So this is sweet. So you can turn your hide into magic armor using the downtime crafting rules, which is awesome. All right, claws. You have shaped your hands into fearsome claws. Your claws are natural weapons which you can use to make unarmed strikes. If you hit with them, you can deal slashing damage equal to 1d6 plus your strength modifier in place of the normal bludgeoning damage of your unarmed strikes. That's fine. It's cool. You probably won't benefit from it much. Yeah, unless you're in one of those rare situations where you're captured, imprisoned, your weapons are taken from you, and now you're loaded up with a 1d6 built-in weapon. So, okay. Next, we have Orb Expert, and these ones I love. Okay, I sincerely, dearly hope that they print these, that this book gets printed into D&D Beyond, because I would love to see these added in a more accessible way to the game, where you can just buy the book and now you have these player options, because these are sweet. I've been wanting something like this for a long time for my players, right? I'm almost always a DM. I've wanted this for my players for a long time. Orb Expert. The only prerequisite is level 4, so it's just a general feat. Your skill with magical orbs helps you evade enemies while overcoming their defenses. You gain the following benefits. Fortune Teller. When you finish a short or long rest, roll 1d6 and record the result. When you cast a spell using an orb as a spellcasting focus, you can add the result of this prescience roll to your spell attack roll, or reduce the target's saving throw by that amount. You must choose to do so before the attack roll or saving throw. Once you use this benefit, you can't use it again until you finish a short or long rest. Unused prescience rolls are lost when you finish a short or long rest. So this is potentially a very powerful buff, and more so if used to debuff their saving throws, right? Because a single spell saving throw, and it doesn't actually it says it has to be a spell attack. Yeah, it says it has to be a spell attack, but the saving throw. No, when you cast a spell using an orb, right? So it does have to be on a spell. So it's a spell attack or a spell saving throw. And usually a saving throw versus a spell or a spell that causes a saving throw is going to be a lot more impactful than a single attack roll from a spell. A lot of spells, and there aren't very many spells that actually have attack rolls, but a lot of times when it's an attack roll, it's that the spell has an attack roll. It's that it's making multiple spell attacks, and this would only buff one of those attacks. Like Scorching Ray or Spellfire Flare or Chromatic Orb, right? You can buff one of those attacks, and you have to decide which attack roll you're buffing before you roll it, and you have to decide similarly which saving throw you're going to debuff before the creature rolls it or the DM rolls it for the creature. So this is a nice little buff, but it's not super strong. But that's okay. This is a feat. Then we have See the Path. While you're holding an orb, opportunity attacks against you have disadvantage. Pretty cool. That's like 1/3 of the speedy feat right there, which is cool. I like this. It gives you just a little bit of prescience, so you know when they're going to try to attack you, right? That's the idea. So this is cool. And then Prescient Escape. While you're holding an orb, whenever a creature you can see enters a space within 5 feet of you, you can use your reaction to move up to your speed without provoking an opportunity attack. So now we have 2 ways to benefit us avoiding opportunity attacks. And I like it. This is pretty cool. It's a way to buff spellcasters, but instead of buffing them by like damage type, which is what you usually see, and even the things I've come up with, right? Like my own homebrew, I would think of usually the things I think of are things related to making you a better fire caster, things like that, right? So this went a totally different direction, unexpected, and I love it, right? Based on the weapon, this is kind of like weapon specialization for spellcasters instead of weapon mastery by weapon type. This is weapon mastery, right? Because your weapons are your spellcasting focus. So it's orb, rod, and a wand, right? There's a wand in here, and there's even a fighting style coming up for wands. Pretty cool. All right, next we have Rod Expert. You've mastered the use of a rod as an arcane focus. You gain the following benefits. Close range focus. If the target of a cantrip you cast using a rod as a spellcasting focus is within 20 feet of you, when you roll a 1 or 2 on a damage die, you can re-roll the die and must use the new roll, even if the new roll is a 1 or a 2. Unshakable casting. When you make a ranged spell attack roll while using a rod as a spellcasting focus, you do not have disadvantage on the roll if you are within 5 feet of an enemy. Rough and Tumble. When you make a ranged spell attack while using a rod as a spellcasting focus, you can use a bonus action to make a melee attack with your rod. It counts as a club for purposes of the attack. So this one's interesting, and I wonder, maybe it's intentional, right? Staff Expert is the same, where it doesn't, and this one is the same. I didn't notice that till just now. Yeah, none of these 3 give you an ability score increase, so they kind of break the mold on that. Now, the 2024 Player's Handbook hadn't been released when they finished writing this and printed it. So maybe they didn't know that that's the direction they're going to go, where everything that is a 4th level, a general feat, is going to give you an ability score increase. So once again, I'd love to see these updated and printed. And if you are going to homebrew this into your campaign so that your players can use it, I would just tack on a ability score increase, let them choose Intelligence, Wisdom, Charisma. I do not think that would make any of these overpowered or even S tier or anything like that. It would make them an A. So I would just slap that on there. And this is interesting. You're going to have a spellcaster who's going to bonk people with their rod as a bonus action. Kind of a cool idea. A lot of these features, like this feature here, right, is something that comes from Spell Sniper. So you get the same thing if you just take Spell Sniper, which kind of devalues this one, because if you're going to be leaning into being an offensive spellcaster, you might take Spell Sniper anyway. Yeah, it might be better than this, and that's the problem with this one. And then the close range, which is you get to reroll some damage dice. It's not very often you get to reroll some of your damage dice on spells that deal damage, so that's nice. I don't know how you'd have to. Maybe this would apply first if you have Elemental Adept and this, and both apply. Then this would apply first. You reroll, and if it's still a 1 or it's still a 1, then Elemental Adept increases it to a 2. I guess is probably the way to rule that. So this is interesting. And then we have the sidebar here on heavy rods, which I think is a reference to something I covered in the Exploring Eberron, which came out after this book. Heavy rods. Humanity's use of wands and staves as arcane focuses dates back to Sarlona, but the rod was born in Breland. Baron Hearth is a Brelish folk hero said to have owned an inn in the days before Galifar. When brigands tried to rob him, they took his staff. Baron smashed a chair, used the leg as a focus for Scorching Ray, and then beat the last brigand with the leg itself. The Brelish Heavy Rod can be used either as an arcane focus or as a standard club. Today, both Brelish and Karnathi artificers produce heavy rods, while Andarian and Siren mages traditionally scorn such rods as deplorably uncouth. A character with the Rod Expert feat doesn't have to be wielding a heavy rod to gain the benefits of the feat. Any rod will suffice. Shadow's Gift of Stone. So this requires you to be a Medusa as your species. You have learned to channel arcane power through your gaze. You gain the following benefits. Increase your intelligence, wisdom, or charisma score by 1 to a maximum of 20. Innate magic. When you reach a character level specified in the Shadow's Gift of Stone spells table, you thereafter always have those spells, the listed spells, prepared. So this isn't just added to your spell list. You have them always prepared. You can cast each of these spells once without expending a spell slot, and you must finish a long rest before you can cast them again in this way. You can also cast these spells using any spell slots you have of the appropriate level. Your spellcasting ability for these spells is the same as the spellcasting ability you chose for your Petrifying Gaze trait. Interesting. So it's not the same ability score you increased. It is the same ability score you chose for your Petrifying Gaze, which is part of your species traits, right? Which are likely to be the same, but maybe not at the time you take this. So that's cool. Ensnaring Strike, Hold Person, Hypnotic Pattern, Stone Skin, Hold Monster. Okay, so that is all the same list that you have from your species. So you're by being a Medusa, these are all added to your spell list, and now this feat makes it so they're always prepared, and you can cast them each once without expending a spell slot. Okay, wow, that's a pretty significant power boost for Medusas, especially if you're not a spellcaster, right? And the spell and the progression here is based on, it looks like it's based on the same thing as what a half caster would have to get access to these, right? Half casters get access to level 5 spells at 17. So you kind of have a little bit of a half caster thing going on here, which is pretty cool. Ensnaring Strike is a spell I like. Of course, it says level 4 because you can't take this feat until you're level 4. Otherwise, it would probably say, level 1 or something like that. So this is cool. This is pretty good. And Hypnotic Pattern is a great spell. So is it still a great spell at level 9? Yeah, I'd say it's still a great spell at level 9. So this is strong. This is A to S for Medusas. So pretty cool and even more differentiating for the Medusa as a species. Probably worth your level 4, feat selection. Then we have Staff Expert, much like the Rod and Orb Experts. So this is a level 4 general feat as well. You've unlocked the deadly ranged potential of the staff. You gain the following benefits. Arcane Artillery. When you cast a spell that has a range of 5 feet or greater using a staff as your spellcasting focus, you can use a bonus action to double the range of the spell. Interesting. Double the range. That's better than the Spell Sniper increase, I think, right? And it uses your bonus action to do so, so that's interesting. There's not a lot of bonus actions that spellcasters can use to enhance their spells, right? Sorcerers have innate sorcery now, which is a bonus action to activate. Wizards don't really have anything. Clerics don't really have anything. Neither do druids, unless the druid subclass has something like the Stars Druid, where you wild shape into your stars form as your bonus action, and then that enhances your spells. So this is cool. Powerful focus. When you roll a 1 or 2 on a damage die for a cantrip you cast while using a staff as a spellcasting focus, you can re-roll a die and must use the new roll, even if the new roll is a 1 or a 2. Interesting. Explosive casting. If all the targets of a spell you cast using a staff as your spellcasting focus are more than half the spell's range from you, one creature of your choice that you hit with a spell attack or that fails a saving throw against a spell has the prone condition. Okay, interesting. So you knock them down. And know that this is any spell you cast. This powerful focus is limited to a cantrip, and this one is also any spell you cast. So this is interesting. Note that this one also doesn't have the +1 ability score increase, and I would frankly just add that. Not a problem. That might, that turns this kind of from like what would be a B or a C kind of feat versus everything else in the game now to maybe an A. Then we have Stone Eyes, another Medusa feat. Your Petrifying Gaze has come into its own. If a creature that has the restrained or paralyzed condition has, as a result of one of your spells, or your Medusa's gift trait, fails a saving throw to end the effect by 5 or more, you can choose to turn that creature to stone. Any magical effects causing the creature to have the restrained or paralyzed condition end, and the creature has the petrified condition for 1 minute, you must concentrate to maintain the effect. If you lose your concentration, the petrified condition ends. If you maintain your concentration on the effect for the entire possible duration, the target is petrified until the condition is ended by greater restoration or similar magic. Let me just make sure that there's, yep, that's the end of the feat. That's pretty sweet. Okay, so now you're a Medusa and can actually fully petrify things. And it's not, I was wondering how they were going to do this without making it just like grossly overpowered. And I think they did a good job. So where it's useful and impactful, but not overpowered, right? Because you're going to be maintaining your concentration on this. This is going to take the place of concentrating on any other spell to pull this off and turn something petrified. And you have to concentrate for the whole minute, which means this is the only thing you're doing, this is the only thing you're concentrating on. Hopefully not the only thing you're doing in a combat. This is the only thing you're concentrating on in the combat, which is a fairly big cost. And if you're going to petrify something indefinitely, it should be a big cost. And you're going to start doing this. Note that this one has a prerequisite of level 8, which I almost missed. So this is a level 8 prerequisite feat, which there is no precedence for in the WotC core rules, nor their expanded rules, right? Although I've created some level 8 and even level 12 prerequisite homebrew feats. This is the first one I've seen where it was printed by anyone else other than me, I guess. So this is cool. I like it. I like that they're leaning into these species and making them more interesting and more impactful. Then we have Voice of the Fury. This is a Harpy prerequisite, level 4. The mystical power of your voice grows stronger. You gain the following benefits. Increase your dexterity, wisdom, or charisma by 1 to a maximum of 20. Innate magic. When you reach a character level specified in the Voice of Fury spells, you thereafter always have the listed spells prepared. You can cast each of these spells once without expending a spell slot, and you must finish a long rest before you can cast them again in this way. You can also have also cast these spells using any spell slots you have of the appropriate level. Your spellcasting ability for these spells is the same as the spellcasting ability you chose for your Harpy's Charms trait. So this is very similar. This is like the equivalent that we just read for the Medusas. This is the equivalent for the Harpies, right? So the Harpies, these are the same, same spells. Same spells that the Harpy gets from their species. The species adds those spells to your spell list. This feat causes you to have them always prepared, and you can cast each of them once without expending a spell slot, which is pretty cool. I don't think that's overly powerful or anything because of these level limitations, right? You don't get enemies abound until level 9. You get suggestion at level 5. This might be the strongest one here just because of the way suggestion works. It can basically take one creature out of a fight for 8 hours, right? And fights last less than a minute. So they're just gone from the fight. And if you land this on the boss of the fight, then you just took out the boss of the fight with one spell. So that's just a good spell. Enemies abound is okay. Not great. Charm Monster is hard to use because they have advantage on the saving throw if you're in combat with them. Dominate Person is pretty good, but suffers from the same problem as what I just said for Charm Monster. And frankly, Charm Person has the same problem, which is the target has advantage on the saving throw if you're in combat with them. And I don't know, like you could use Dominate Person to like take over, somebody and control them when you're not in combat, take control of somebody and force them to do things to get you places that you couldn't otherwise access out of combat. So helping you through some kind of exploration encounter, social encounter. But its best use case is for combat, and they made it weak in combat because of that advantage on the save if you're in combat with them. So I do wish they had not printed those spells that way. By they, I mean WotC, right? Because those are core rule spells. So this is cool. I would say it's not quite as good as the Medusa one, but good, solid, right? It gives you 5 spells that you cast for free, including a 5th level spell. Now you don't get that till level 17, so this is not OP in any way. You don't even get access to your 2nd level spell till level 5, right? Whereas like something like a Misty Step gives you a 2nd level spell, and it gives you access to that 2nd level spell right at level 4 when you take it, or right whenever you take the feat, whenever that is. So I'd say these are good, but not overpowered. Wand Expert. Now this is the last of those feats I was talking about for the equivalent of weapon mastery for spellcasters. You are adept with the use of wands. As swift spellcasting focuses, you gain the following benefits. Wand mastery. If you make a spell attack using a wand as a spellcasting focus, you gain advantage on the attack roll if the target hasn't taken a turn yet. Cool. A little bit like the assassin feature. Unshakable casting. When you make a ranged spell attack roll while using a wand as a spellcasting focus, you do not have disadvantage on the roll if you are within 5 feet of an enemy. Okay, so same thing as the spell sniper. And then arcane quick draw. Drawing or storing a wand does not count against the number of object interactions you can take for free on your turn. Does that mean you can do as many draw and stows on a wand that you want every round, every turn, and it doesn't cost you any action economy. Maybe that's how it reads. I'm not sure if that was intended. Can that be abused? Certainly by thief rogues. Okay, thief rogues would definitely want this feature, this feat. That's like one of the only ways to like rein in the thief rogue is no, you can't, be constantly drawing and stowing those things for free. And this removes that, so they would be OP. They would be more OP. Dang thief rogues. And with this one, I would definitely just add that +1 ability score increase on this one too. It's this whole feat's not a problem for anyone but a thief rogue, and thief rogues are a problem anyway. And that's the problem, not this feat. So I would just take this one as is. All right, next we have Warden Initiate, another general feat level 4. You have learned some of the secrets and techniques of the Wardens of the Wood Druidic Order. I apologize, this is another one I don't know any more lore detail on this order. If you do, let me know in the comments. Increase your wisdom or charisma score by 1 to a maximum of 20. Warden's proficiency, you gain proficiency with the animal handling skill, which is cool. And I think that's one that players don't think to use very often, but it's one that you can use a lot to a lot of impact. The players, right? You can initiate uses of animal handling to have a significant impact on the game. And DMs, I advise you to lean into this kind of thing when players are trying to do that stuff. Now, there's a line between when they're trying to engage in like player shenanigans and doing things that shouldn't be allowed, where they're going too far. But don't just shut it down completely just because they're trying to use a feature, right? Same thing with illusions, right? Very tricky things to use because you want to allow it so that it has an impact, is useful. Do not allow them to ruin, the game. And there's a kind of a gray area in between there that you have to kind of figure out how to walk. Maybe I should do a video on that someday. I'm not sure I'm great at that yet myself. Like I've got work to do myself in that particular thing I just described, of that gray area between empowering and not letting something break the game. And I'm still working on it. So if you're still working on it too, do not feel bad because all of us struggle with it. All right, Protect Ally. When a creature you can see hits another creature within 5 feet of you with an attack roll, you can take a reaction to reduce the damage dealt to the target by 1d6 plus your proficiency bonus. Once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish a short or long rest. So that's kind of like the Interception fighting style, which is now the weakest fighting style in 2024, which they, of course, wouldn't have known by the time they finished this book because the 2024 Player's Handbook hadn't been released yet. Warden spells. If you have the spellcasting or pact magic class features, the spells in the Wardens of the Wood spells table are added to the spell list of your spellcasting class. So you're going to add some spells to your spell list. Sanctuary, Detect Thoughts, Blink, Mordenkainen's Faithful Hound, and Hold Monster. These are interesting and useful. Like Detect Thoughts, some people get a lot of mileage out of it. It's a very strong spell. And other people kind of struggle to use it and figure out how to make use of it and have it be meaningful in the games. Frankly, I have to admit, with this particular spell, Detect Thoughts, I'm more in that second category than I am personally in that first category. Although I try to lean into it in different ways as a DM, and like if you have Detect Thoughts going on somebody, I give you like advantage on certain things in combat, and they have disadvantage on certain things in combat because you kind of know what they're going to do, right? Not kind of, you do know what they're going to try to do, so you should have some impact on that. And I kind of throw in a little bit of advantages here and disadvantages there to try to represent that. Sanctuary is great for protecting allies. It's like a threat dump, right? If you ever played World of Warcraft, and like any game that's like that, where that kind of approach, the characters who are not supposed to be tanks, who can do a ton of damage, even the healers usually get some sort of form of threat dump or aggro dump, where you can use a feature that dumps all of your aggro because you're getting too close to pulling aggro from the tank. And that's kind of what Sanctuary is. It's an aggro dump. Now, it doesn't really dump your aggro. It just means they're going to have a harder time to attack you. So that discourages them from attacking you, and they try going after someone else, right? If they chase you down and then fail their saving throw against Sanctuary, then they can't even make their attack. And if they don't have enough movement to reach anyone else, then they've lost their round. So in those kind of scenarios, they might even just not even try to go after you because they're going to try to go after somebody that is in range of their movement, that they're not going to have this extra saving throw that they have to overcome just to make the attack. Blink is an interesting one. It can be useful, but it can also be like a hindrance, right? Not all the time do you want to not be present, right? A lot of the times you have reactions you want to use to either hinder the enemies or help your allies. And if you blink away at the end of your turn, then you're not there to use any of your reactions. You're also not there to see what's going on. Although I guess you're in the ethereal, border ethereal, so you can see what's going on. But you can't affect it. Mordenkainen's Faithful Hound, this can be quite good. especially because it doesn't take concentration. And then Hold Monster can be quite good. That can just end combats. It's better if you can upcast it, though, right? Just a single target is not a great way that might just save, and then you wasted your turn and a spell slot and had no effect. It's not a great way to spend your turn. So you kind of want to upcast that and just have a chance to like cast it on multiple enemies and have a chance at least some of them are going to fail the saving throw. But this is decent because of that spell list. The non-spell list features are pretty mild on this one, but I think it would still be fun and good to get and thematic. Looks like a very much kind of like your standard druid order, right? Wardens of the Woods. You're just a regular druid who are trying to protect the woods from civilization, but you're also not trying to like destroy civilization or the arcane casting world. So this is good. Wings of Stone. This is another gargoyle feat. Super short. This is the whole feat. You have manifested stone wings and achieved mastery of the air. You have a flying speed equal to your speed. That's it. Done. There's no note that there's no like caveats that say you can't fly while you're wearing medium or heavy armor or anything like that. It's just you fly. Done. So as short as this is, 2 short sentences, this is I would say a pretty powerful feat. I know a lot of people say that like unconcentration free flight is OP. I don't think so. I have never seen that be OP in any of my games ever. I always see flight, or usually flight is useful, right? There are certain scenarios where I've seen somebody, expend resources to fly and it had no impact at all. That's not very common. Usually it has an impact and it's useful, but I've never ever seen flight be OP in any session I've ever DM'd ever. Not in my one shots where I tend to have a lot of like optimizers, not in any of my campaigns ever. So yeah, I don't think this is OP at all. This is a solid A feat and a cool thing to get as a gargoyle, and I would totally allow it. And frankly, I just realized again that this one doesn't give you an ability score increase. I would slap an ability score increase on this one and not change anything else. Just give them an ability score increase. That would be just fine. Next, we have Winter Initiate. And this is going to be the last of our general feats. And then we have the fighting style, which I'm going to cover as part of this one because those are feats now. And that'll be the end of this video. I'll cover, I'll do more videos to finish off this book. Winter Initiate. It's a general feat, level 4. You have learned some of the secrets and techniques of the Children of Winter Druidic Order. You gain the following benefits. Now, this one, somebody did mention, give me a little bit of lore on this one. This is a lot like the Ashbound in that they are opposed. Right, they are opposed to forces that they view as destroying or infringing upon nature, and they are actively fighting against it. So increase your wisdom or constitution by 1 to a maximum of 20. Life from death. Whenever you take necrotic damage, you gain temporary hit points equal to your proficiency bonus after you take the damage. Cool. Okay. Summon Decay. When you conjure a creature with a spell or magical ability, you can choose for that creature to be undead instead of its usual creature type. Okay. That's not often going to be impactful. Understand disease. You have advantage on ability checks to research, diagnose, and treat disease. Okay. Now the concept of disease like this has largely been removed from 2024, and it's mostly just implemented as poison or as the poison condition. Now they still technically can have diseases, but what the diseases do is cause the poison condition. So this should still work just fine. It would just have to be applied. The DM would have to like guess on when they should apply it, right? Like there's certain stat blocks that describe it as causing it, or the name of the feature is that it's causing a disease. And yet what actually happens is it causes the poison condition, and the DMs will just have to read that and infer in those scenarios, well, this is actually a disease, and then this feat would apply. One thing I would add, if they reprint this, or if you homebrew this into your games, is I would also add a clause that talks about magical contagions, which is where all the real diseases that had real mechanics specifically behind them, those all turned into magical contagions, and those are listed in the Dungeon Master's Guide. I don't know why they decided like shift things around, because they ended up with the same number of mechanics that we have to deal with. They just renamed everything that was a mechanical disease, and they renamed it a magical contagion. And then what the standard definition of disease is just it causes the poison condition. Okay, so I would just add that here if you're going to homebrew this in. And then lastly, Children of Winter spells. You have these, and that's just, these things are going to be added to your spell list. And these are the spells: False Life, Ray of Enfeeblement, Bestow Curse, Death Ward, and Enervation. False Life, good spell. Rave Enfeeblement is okay. You know, it's like a C or a B kind of thing. It does do a decent amount of like control effect on enemies, but it lasts 1 round. But it doesn't take concentration, which is nice. Bestow Curse is a rough spell. They made it better in 2024. It's still not great. I believe it's still a touch. So you got to get up there and touch them, and then it doesn't do anything to them. It just causes some sort of like big negative debuff, but it's not even as good as like just causing the incapacitated condition, right? If you just have Tasha's Hideous Laughter, that incapacitates them, and that's a bigger debuff than what Bestow Curse does. The real like upside to Bestow Curse is like it lasts a long time, but the reality is that monsters, player characters just kill them. You either kill them in the combat or the player characters die, right? Yes, you can have monsters run away. You can have them run in. You know, the player characters can like meet them multiple times, and if you can somehow land a Bestow Curse on them and then upcast it so it lasts indefinitely, now the next time you meet them, they're still going to be cursed. That's kind of the thing you're going for with the Bestow Curse is you're going to curse them now, and it's going to be that curse somehow that you're putting on them, you're going to benefit from not just in this combat, you know, not just in 1 minute, but hours from now. And if you can't create a scenario where you're going to fight them again hours from now, then Bestow Curse just isn't worth it. Death Ward is a good one. It's not great. You're kind of betting that some of you might die, but you know, it's if you got spell slots to spare, you might as well cast this on yourself. And then Enervation actually is kind of a weak spell. So this is kind of a mixed spell list. And yeah, your other features though, like probably the best feature this whole feat gives you is this temporary hit points from necrotic damage, and giving it to you after you take the necrotic damage is a cool way to do it. Like I've never seen, you don't really see mechanics that work like that, so that's cool. So all in all, I'd still say this is like a B kind of feat. So it's not bad to take, I think. And if it leans into the theme and flavor of this character you're trying to create, this is going to be just fine, right? You're not going to be weak for having taken this. It's still going to be solid for you. Have some cool and interesting features. Yeah, I'd give it a B. And last but not least, we have the fighting style, Wandslinger, which is one that I was very excited for. And I am excited for. So this is super cool. All right, you gain the following benefits: Arcane Aim. You gain a +1 bonus to attack rolls you make with spells. Cool. Mystic Force. When you cast a cantrip that requires the target make a saving throw, increase the DC of the saving throw by 1. I think this is sweet. Who would want it? Only a few classes get fighting styles, right? It's the fighter, barbarian, sorry, not barbarian, fighter, paladin, ranger are the only ones who get fighting styles. And you have to have a fighting style to take this as a feat. So only fighters, paladins, and rangers can even get this. Now you can multi-class just to qualify, right? One fighter level dip will get you that will get you what you need to qualify, and would get you this too, right? Because you could just take this as the fighting style you get from being a fighter at first level. Okay, yeah, that's interesting though. Like if you want this on a wizard, you're gonna have to dip fighter, but it gives you a +1 on your attack rolls with your spells, and it gives you a +1 on save DCs for your cantrips. So this is cool. I like it. I wish, and people have said this a few times, that WotC is going away from allowing subclasses to give fighting styles. Subclasses that don't already, for classes that don't already give you a fighting style, like the champion gives you another fighting style, right? But that's the only one, and I think that would be wrong, right? The swords bard gives a fighting style, and I like it. I think that one would lose a lot if it doesn't get a fighting style. Frankly, I think the armorer should give a fighting style. The armor artificer should give a fighting style, and I think the battlesmith fighter should give a fighting style. And I would give a fighting style to the forge adept artificer subclass, which is from the exploring Eberron. Like that one definitely should deserve a fighting style. And I know we don't agree, Dag, but I would give that forge adept weapon masteries too. I like weapon masteries. I think they are very good for my, I love seeing players use it. They use them to great effect. They are impactful and useful, and they don't bog down the game at all. But my games, I see Chromatic Orb bog it way down. So, we all have different perspectives, I guess. Some people say Chromatic Orb doesn't bog it down at all, and for me, it was horrible. It was 10, 15 minutes just waiting to resolve one spell. And Topple doesn't slow anything down. So, all right, that's the end of the feats. These are all pretty darn cool. I would really love to see these spruced up and printed into the uh, and printed, or sorry, spruced up and reprinted and published on D&D Beyond, so that we can all get easier access to these. That would be very exciting, in my opinion. All right, that's all I got for this one. Thanks for watching. Remember to be cool when you play D&D. It's a game. The only point of it is to have fun with your friends. If you don't have enough D&D in your life, check the links in the descriptions. You can find me on Discord. Join my Discord server. You can find me on Start Playing Games and play on one of my games. Or if you're a DM and you're looking for more players, you can join my Discord and post your games in my Looking for Group channel. Try to find good players there. There's lots of good people in that community. I don't allow jerks. So I kick them out pretty aggressively. And nobody there is a jerk as far as I know. They all seem like really, really cool people. Catch you next time.